He's just stressed, my husband said, punching her again. 9 p.m. bathroom visits, bandages, tears, I installed a camera. The truth broke my heart. At about 9, when the big hand was on the 9, I heard that noise again. It was a soft sound, like the upstairs bathroom door shutting. I lifted my head from the documents on my desk and stared up at the ceiling. This house, built in the 80s, had wood floors that would make a little cracking sound whenever anyone walked on them. Those sounds always helped me keep track of where my daughter was. I could hear Emma's little feet moving towards the bathroom. Emma. As I yelled up the stairs, my 10-year-old daughter gave her typical answer. It was the same chat we'd been having at this time lately. Yes, Mom, I'll be out soon. Something in her tone, a sort of rush, suggested she was in a hurry. I stood in the hallway, gazing at the closed door. Early September nights in Minnesota were starting to get cold already. I could feel the cold air coming in through the bathroom window. The bathroom light, which was next to our bedroom, illuminated a slender line of light into the hallway. I'd been a little worried about Emma's behavior recently. Each night around 9, she would go into the bathroom and spend a lot of time there. She wasn't in there showering or brushing her teeth. There was very little sound of running water. Only hints of what she was doing seeped out into the hallway. I could hear drawers opening, something being set down, and sometimes a quiet sigh. Emma, are you really okay? I moved closer to the door again and called out. After a small delay, she answered, hearing my concerned maternal voice. I'll be out soon, Mom, I replied, using the same phrases I always did. Yet there was a subtle tone in her voice, implying she was concealing something from me. A mother's instinct whispered that something was amiss. Whatever was occurring beyond that closed door involved more than just her getting ready for the night. I walked back to the living room on the lower level and gazed outside. It was nearly the hour for my husband, Thomas, to be back. He worked as a mid-level executive for Coldwell Banker, a real estate development firm, and traveled to and from work on Interstate 35W lately. He'd been arriving home later, possibly because of job-related pressures. Furthermore, when he eventually did arrive home, there was a faint smell of alcohol. He became easily agitated and didn't feel like chatting with anyone. I glanced at my phone screen. It was 9:15, and 20 minutes had ticked by since Emma entered the bathroom. The post-dinner cleanup from the meal we'd bought at Whole Foods was completed, and we'd typically be watching television as a family. However, lately, around this time, Emma would always vanish into the bathroom. What could be the explanation for a typical 10-year-old girl to occupy herself in there for so long? I didn't hear any sounds of a shower running, nor did I hear water running in the sink. Instead, I heard slight, infrequent noises of something being repositioned. Previously, I hadn't really given it much thought. I just assumed it was a minor adjustment as my daughter matured. She was in 4th grade at Pleasant View Elementary School, a time when her body was starting to change. But during the previous week, the feeling that something was off had become more pronounced. Lately, it seemed like Emma's actions were evolving subtly. She immediately retreats to her room after school now. I recall that she'd previously tell me all the happenings of her day with a smile. While we are at the dinner table, she's less chatty than she used to be. And precisely at 9 p.m., she makes her way to the bathroom. She turns toward the bathroom around the table at the time Thomas usually arrives home. It feels like she's wanting to get away from something, or concealing something. Outside, the streetlights gave off their cold, autumnal glow. Emma, having completed her assignments, would typically be engrossed in a Harry Potter book at this time. There was an open book on her desk, yet now I sensed something secret unfolding behind that shut door. I ascended the stairs once more, and stood right in front of the bathroom door. I could hear noises from inside, like something being packaged, like fabric being manipulated. Maybe she was folding towels. I saw a worried reflection in the misty mirror. Emma, time for bed. 5 more minutes, a quick voice responded. That voice was missing its usual cheerfulness. There was a distinct sense of hurry, as if she was being pursued. It felt as though she was fighting against time. My hand reached out and touched the doorknob, but I couldn't turn it. It was locked from the inside. Being a mom, it wouldn't be right for me to try to open the door while Emma was taking a bath. But this wasn't a normal bath. There was no noise of running water, no indication of a shower, just the muffled noise of someone frantically doing something. The street trees' shadows made dancing patterns on the hall walls. The aroma of the caribou coffee I'd picked up that day was still faintly present in the air. Everything seemed typical for a weeknight at home. However, amidst the stillness, I had a nagging feeling that something important was about to happen. It was a mother's intuition giving off an alert. The glow of car headlights shone through the window. Thomas should be arriving home soon. Emma swiftly opened the front door and stepped out into the hall in her pajamas. Her hair hadn't been wet. She quickly went towards her bedroom, keeping her eyes down. She acted like she was trying to escape something. "Good night, Mom," she murmured. Her voice was quiet and sounded shaky. The sound of her door closing seemed to confirm that again something was being kept a secret tonight. That secret was cloaked in the shadows of the night. I went into the bathroom. It didn't look like anyone had been in there. The towels were all neatly arranged. The tub was completely dry. Only the first aid kit under the sink looked a little unusual. On the floor, there was a lone piece of used cotton forgotten there. The following morning, Emma insisted on wearing a long-sleeved hoodie to school, despite the fact that it was still pretty warm even though it was September. "Aren't you hot?" I asked, and Emma shook her head. "I'm cold, this is fine." There was a defensive tone in the way she acted. She had her arms crossed over her chest, and she was curled up into herself. I started to strongly believe that the time she spent in the bathroom last night related to her actions that morning. During breakfast, Emma hardly ate a thing, just shredding her toast into minuscule bits. Those scrambled eggs that she usually loves, she didn't even touch. Instead, she was constantly playing with the edges of her sleeves. Does she think school is fun? Yeah. After her brief response, there was a silence that hung in the air. The long, detailed stories I used to get, I wasn't hearing anymore. Things like adventures with her friends, things she learned in class, it was all coming out in brief statements. I recalled the small bit of cotton I'd come across the previous evening as I watched Emma disappear from view after I dropped her off. Why would she need the first aid kit? What was up with her being in the bathroom so long? And why did it seem to match up with her father coming home? When I got home early from my afternoon job, Thomas's jacket was just tossed onto the living room stuff. It was a time when he would normally be at work. "Are you feeling all right?" My husband, as he came downstairs, carried the scent of alcohol right in the middle of the day. Those guys at the office are so incompetent. They didn't follow what I told them, so everything has to be fixed. Thomas was clearly annoyed, snapping while looking at his phone. He'd been having more bad moods recently. He mentioned that things had been getting hectic at Coldwell Banker, but was this just regular work stress? I felt myself starting to worry about Emma. I carefully asked him, "Aren't you worried?" "About what?" he asked, still dismissive, as he reached for the whiskey bottle. This was happening at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That evening, Emma didn't get home at her regular time after school. When I phoned anxious, she told me she was at the library working on assignments. Before, she'd always kept me informed about that sort of thing. Once Emma did get back, she ran straight to the bathroom once more. Sooner than usual, I thought, maybe because she knew Thomas was already here. From the other side of the closed door came the exact noises as the night before. The sound of the first aid kit opening, the sound of bandages being wrapped. Every so often, a faint whimper managed to slip out. I made my decision. I couldn't continue living in terror based only on what I imagined. I had to get to the bottom of it. I bought a tiny camera online, and it showed up the very next day with expedited shipping. While Emma was at school and Thomas was at work for that short time, my hands were trembling. I hid the little camera, putting it near the bathroom fan, and carefully angled it so that nobody would detect it. My feelings were a mess about whether this was the correct thing to do if I was intruding on my daughter's personal space. But I couldn't go on like this, not sleeping. That evening, the instant Emma was home from school, she immediately put on long sleeves once again. Even with the air conditioning on, it was still warm out, being September. There was a definite urgency in her actions, trying to conceal something. She was constantly tugging at her sleeves, checking her neckline, shrinking away if someone got near. During the meal, I saw Emma's hands shaking discreetly under the table. It happened right after Thomas texted about when he'd be home. "I feel sick." Having said that, Emma got up from her seat and vanished into the upstairs bathroom once more, 9 o'clock again for tonight's events. It was the same time as always. However, this evening I'd finally discovered the actual facts. The tiny camera was capturing all the action. I was downstairs, intently watching my cell phone screen. The cause of Emma's transformation would shortly be unveiled there. My hand was shaking just a little bit when I pressed the play button, experiencing both apprehension and resolve. What I saw on my cell phone brought my deepest anxieties to life. Exactly at 9, it was like a pulse, and there on the screen was my daughter. Illuminated by the bathroom's harsh, bright light, it was Emma. She gradually removed her hoodie and pushed up the sleeves of her long-sleeved shirt. Her actions showed little signs of pain she'd been through. In the reflection, I saw the multiple marks on her arms, the blue stains and the brownish, faded scars. The scars created unusual patterns from her elbow up toward her shoulder. Recent wounds covered the older ones and more recent ones on top of those. It was all like a record of time passing. I almost stopped breathing right then. No sound came from my throat and I was stunned. But this was only the start, this horrifying display. Emma carefully unfastened her shirt. I saw how familiar these motions were. It was as if it was a nightly ritual, these robotic and exact actions. As each button was released, new scars were brought into view. When the shirt went to the floor, all the scars on her back became clear to me. Red welts like from a belt, dark bruises resembling where someone had grabbed her. I noticed some marks close to where her shoulder blades would be. They looked like she had been restrained. My fingers trembled, and I almost let go of my phone. For an instant, the image on the screen blurred. Even though I desperately wished to avert my gaze, I couldn't stop watching the truth my daughter had suffered in solitude. The video revealed the reality Emma had been secretly dealing with every single evening. Emma's tiny hands reached for the first aid kit, which she kept beneath the sink. With motions that came naturally to her, she retrieved antiseptic and cotton balls, using them to treat the fresh wounds. Even as she winced from the pain, she clenched her lips tightly, trying her hardest not to make a noise. She bit down so hard that it left marks on her teeth. Her motions in wrapping the bandages were also practiced. Not overly tight, but snug enough to prevent the wounds from moving around. So this was the nightly routine, happening at 9 o'clock. It was a time to deal with her injuries by herself, without anyone realizing and without being able to get help from anybody. Each time the antiseptic made her wounds sting, Emma's shoulders would tremble a little, but she remained silent. It was like she had acquired over a long period how to handle the pain. The look on her face, which I could see reflected in the mirror, revealed something too heavy for a 10-year-old to have to bear. All the time she'd spent not able to ask for assistance, just concealing her injuries. Days of silently enduring, scared of the threats that would break the family apart. The gentle whir of the bathroom fan kept going, and Emma kept going with her routine, quiet as could be. The sound of my feet in the hall sometimes made her jump, and I sometimes found myself packing the hall as if I didn't see anything. In the video, after she'd put fresh bandages on, Emma pulled her shirt back over herself with care. She covered her arm wounds with long sleeves and bruises on her neck with a high collar, concealing all of it, completely out of sight. Every action felt like putting on protective gear, like she was readying herself for some fight to come. And then she put the used cotton wool, carefully hidden in the trash can so no one would see. She piled more trash on top, making sure there was no evidence. That piece of cotton wool I discovered the other night was a clue, a reminder of this secret practice. It really should have been a warning I shouldn't have ignored. The video goes on. Emma gives herself one last look in the mirror. Are all her injuries concealed? Are there any creases in her clothing, any signs she'd been crying, like going through a routine, a set of actions without much feeling? She examined the dark circles under her eyes, made sure her cheeks looked okay, rearranged her hair to hide her neck injuries just so. Then she let out a deep breath, a tired sigh coming from her small body, somehow too grown up for a girl her age. Emma. I quietly called out to my daughter in the video, my voice shaking. Even though she was physically present, perhaps even at this very second while I was filming, she might have been doing the same thing upstairs in the bathroom, but I hadn't realized it. I wasn't able to keep her safe. I had failed at my most fundamental responsibility. I didn't hesitate. I set the phone down and dialed 911. My hand was trembling as I lifted the phone. My fingers were shaking as I punched in the digits, but I couldn't delay any further. I had to resolve this immediately, even if it saved a mere fraction of time. I'm reporting domestic abuse. I'm reporting domestic violence. My 10-year-old daughter. My voice broke. My mouth felt parched. However, there wasn't time to weep. The authorities assured me a specialized team would be dispatched without delay. In the meantime, I needed to protect Emma. I climbed the stairs and rapped on the bathroom door. The wooden door vibrated a little under my knuckles. Emma unlocked the door. I could hear her moving around inside. Hasty noises. The noise of concealing bandages or maybe getting rid of proof. Just a second. Her voice sounded more frantic than usual, coupled with a sense of urgency. Open it right away, please. Maybe picking up on something in my voice, Emma slowly opened the door. She still wouldn't look up. Her long eyelashes were shaking. Everything is all right now. Right as I was reaching out to hug her, Thomas's car arrived. The familiar sound of tires on the gravel. But tonight, even that noise sounded threatening. The sound of the front door opening, heavy footfalls, then my husband's voice. The police are here. What happened? His voice sounds different, not as threatening as usual. There's a note of fear in it, like he's trapped. At the noise of someone coming up the stairs, Emma's posture became rigid. I clutched my little girl close to me. I would never again allow anyone to harm my precious daughter. The sound of the police coming in the front door, the swishing of their uniforms, the faint crackle of their radios. Then Thomas speaks. What is going on here? The smell of booze wafts up the stairs. We got a call from your spouse. At the officer's composed tone, the color vanished from Thomas's face. His face, lit by the hallway light, displayed a surrender that could no longer be hidden. Holding Emma in my arms, her tiny body shook. Can you tell us how Emma got her injuries? The soft voice of the female officer from the special unit drifted into the bathroom. Thomas's face became ashen. The complete truth was clear in that moment. No more lies, no more pretending. This was the instant when nothing else mattered. Still holding my little girl, I made a promise in my heart to start a new life that was about to start. I would never again permit someone to cause her pain. This determination was the only thing that was important in this instant. The time of dealing with the emotional hurt, alone in the quiet of the bathroom late at night, was over. The click of handcuffs signaled the end of a terrible, drawn-out ordeal. The chilly metal sound sliced through the quiet of the autumn night. Thomas Brown, you are under arrest on suspicion of child abuse. When the officer's words resonated throughout the entrance, I clutched Emma close. My little girl's frame still shook a little, but I could feel those shivers beginning to fade away. From now on, everything would be different. Why didn't you explain this to me? I whispered while holding Emma tight. The noise of the police sirens started to quiet in the distance. The police cruiser that held my husband slowly vanished into the shadows of our neighborhood. All that was left was a profound quiet and the feeling of starting over. Dad said, Emma went on in a tiny voice, her face against my chest, that our family would crumble. He also said, Mom would be miserable. Furthermore, he said, everyone would be miserable because of me. He would repeat those things daily. The tears won't stop flowing. Despite having her so close, I never saw how much my daughter was hurting. The time she spent alone healing injuries in the safety of the bathroom every evening. She endured days without being able to ask anyone for support. It was a burden far too great for a child in the 4th grade to carry. The representative from Child Protective Services talked to us in a soft manner, along with a female counselor who had quickly arrived, despite the time of night. That kind voice slowly made the tension in the air lessen. When did your father's actions start to change? Emma considered this for a little while, her tiny fingers still gripping my sweater tightly. There was a big problem at Dad's job, and after that he started drinking more, she stated. At first, he just used to shout. I noticed her speech start to fade away. I started gently running my fingers through my little girl's hair. Emma went on to say that Dad had broken down, telling her he couldn't manage his temper. But the following day, those words exposed the pattern of the abuse. Pressure from work combined with drinking. Those were the things that made him lash out at his precious daughter. Afterwards, there were apologies and remorse, but the same thing would happen again. This bad pattern was a regular feature of our lives as a family. The findings of the investigation became obvious. Thomas would strike his daughter in a drunken fury, then be remorseful the following day. However, he'd do the same thing all over again. He couldn't get a grip on his feelings, and he kept harming the person he should have been shielding. The vicious circle of alcohol and violence had also damaged him deeply. I wondered if the teachers at school ever saw anything. Emma just shook her head when I worried about gym classes at Pleasant View Elementary. That movement showed the sad insight of a kid who had been keeping things hidden for a long time. I got dressed last, after everyone else was gone. For swimming lessons, I said I had a tummy ache and didn't go. It really saddened me that my 10-year-old daughter had to live so carefully. She was constantly having to consider how to conceal her injuries, no matter where she was, school, her friends' homes, or anywhere else. The police took pictures of the injuries and made official medical records. Everything that had happened to Emma was written down. The more serious the doctor's face became, the more guilty I felt. Bruises on her arms, cuts on her back, and injured shoulders. Every single detail painted a picture of the things my daughter had suffered through. It's not anyone's doing, the CPS worker stated, picking up on the look on my face. What's important is that you saw what was happening and did something about it. This is just the starting point, she continued. Your fresh start with Emma commences right now. Those statements managed to ease some of the weight I was carrying. As the dark of night began to fade, we were making a turn. Our destination was a temporary shelter. Inside the old vehicle, we were surrounded by the warmth coming from the heater. It was the dawn of a new life. Mom, Emma murmured quietly while in the car. The streetlights cast a soft glow on her face. What is it? I questioned. I don't have to hide in the bathroom anymore. I responded affirmatively to her inquiry, trying to fight back the emotion in my throat. You are safe now. There is no need for you to hide again. From here on out, no matter what transpires, I will always be with you, I promised her. For the first time in quite a while, a sense of relief showed in Emma's eyes. It was a small, delicate glimmer of hope, but without a doubt it was there. I could feel her heart, which had been shut off for so long, starting to open up. When we reached the shelter, a specialist counselor was there to greet us. I knew we were beginning a new chapter here, leading up to Thomas's trial. It would give Emma's emotional scars time to heal, and give me the space to find my way as a mother again. Crucially, it would provide days to slowly rebuild the trust between us. Tomorrow, a new day begins, doesn't it? Emma softly inquired, staring out the window toward the brightening sky. That voice now radiated only a small but unwavering belief rather than fear. As I softly run my fingers through my daughter's hair, I considered our future. Though it would be a while before those painful memories vanished, I felt different. She didn't have to struggle through this alone. Together, we would advance, one tiny action after another. A fresh chapter in our lives as a mother and daughter begins. My little girl's words, "Mom, thank you," went unanswered. I could only hug her as tightly as I could. My own tears flowed freely down my face. This was our fresh start. I promised myself I'd never allow my daughter to suffer again. That promise I made as the sun came up. Half a year has come and gone since then. I looked at Emma out in the schoolyard and I thought, "Mom, look." She was happily playing with some other kids at Pleasant View Elementary. The fear that once gripped her was no longer there. The marks on her arms from the rolled-up sleeves were visibly becoming less noticeable. We also started living in a different apartment. The legal proceedings against Thomas finished up 3 months ago, and he was given a 4-year prison term. While in court, he confessed to everything, shedding tears, and said he would get help for his drinking problem. At first, Emma would immediately get scared just hearing her father's name mentioned. However, with the help of weekly counseling sessions, she found a way to express her emotions. She could say that it was not her father's fault. He was sick, wasn't he? It took a very long time before she could say that. I continued to deal with my own feeling of guilt as a parent. Why hadn't I seen what was happening sooner? However, the counselor's words were a source of support for me. Making progress is the best option for both of you at this point. I also got a new job. Even though the pay isn't as good as before, the work hours sync up with Emma's school schedule. Every evening we prepare supper together and chat about our day. I now know how much these simple times together truly mean. Thomas sends letters once a month as part of his recovery plan. He talks about his battle with alcohol, remorse for his behavior, and says he's sorry to us. Emma doesn't want to read those letters right now, but maybe one day she'll be able to pardon her dad. That's a decision she has to come to on her own. We'll patiently wait for that moment. Mom, Emma's holding my hand as we walk home from school today. Would you be able to come to her class's observation day next week? That simple question actually makes me cry. My daughter, who used to dread these events, now she wants to show me her presentation, which she's really proud of. Absolutely, I will go. I firmly squeeze her hand back. Our new life is just starting to unfold. But we are moving forward slowly, one day at a time. The bathroom door will never be kept shut out of fear, not anymore.